Oh my goodness, Game 3 is here. For any of you who don't like best of sevens, don't worry. We are essentially back to best of 5 mode. It is going to be 1-1 right now, starting on Game 3 here on Shakuras Plateau. Or as the Apollo calls it, Plateau. Because he's British. We do see mouz.ThorZaIN spawning in the top right position as that blue Terran. In the bottom left, we have NaNiwa as the red Protoss. And before we talk about this game a little bit, chill, I'd just like to direct everyone to Poker Strategy, TSL3.com, where you can get all the information on the back VODs. And if you're like me and you love looking at brackets and all the tournament statistics, you can go to Team Liquid's big event tracker on teamliquid.net. Just click on the events tab. I personally use that all the time just when I love to do my sorts of theory crafting and fantasizing about what could be in the tournaments.
Yeah, or, as well as all Team Liquid social media and YouTube channels, which are always Team Liquid Net. So that's youtube.com/TeamLiquidNet, as well as twitter.com/TeamLiquidNet, run by JWD, Kenneget, and of course, hilarious Hotbid. So go ahead and check those out, follow them.
And, you know, chill. I mean, we just see a barracks getting built. We see a gateway getting built. Everyone's seen this sort of thing. I'd like to give a shout out to all the fine folks at Team Liquid who are actually putting this on, like Hotbid, who's literally talking into our ears while this is going on. Hotbid, the Hero King Observer. Oh, yes. My goodness. These events would be impossible without their dedication, so huge shout-outs to you, you handsome, swab baller little gentleman. We do see, it looks like ThorZaIN doing a little bit of scouting around his own main. I love the safety of both of these players.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, we've seen thus far in game number 1 and game number 2, both successful and unsuccessful, ThorZaIN has been the aggressor in both games. So Shakuras Plateau does have an opportunity for aggression yet again. It's got this fairly wide ramp, but one entrance into your natural. So there's an opportunity for ThorZaIN to press forward and be aggressive here again in game number 2. If I'm him and I look back to, in game number 3, looking back to game number 2, really it didn't work out that well for him. So I've got to wonder if we're going to see that yet again, or he's going to switch up his style a little bit.
Do see that cybernetic score going down right now for NaNiwa. We have not seen a second gas geyser go down yet. We also see it looks like there was only 2 in that geyser for a period of time, and now there is none in ThorZaIN's geyser right now. Keep in mind, a worker mines you about $40 a minute. So that means that ThorZaIN, by pulling those extra 2 workers off, might get an extra 80 or so minerals if he times it out correctly. One of those essential minor edges that you desperately need when you're playing against the player of NaNiwa's caliber.
Yeah, and we can see the advantage of that is that he gets his natural command center going just a little bit earlier than he would had he not done that. I'm taking a look at the refinery to see when is he going to drop those SCVs back into the refinery. Still has not done it. Now is the timing when he's going to do that. SCV in the main base going to get chased down by that stalker. He's going to go for one last hurrah to see what he can see, and that is a gateway and a cybernetic score before getting sniped. No second gas. NaNiwa going to drop down his expansion equal to the task, so both players expanding very quickly and fairly safely here in game number 3.
I want to point out how brilliant ThorZaIN's opening is. A huge issue that you will always have if you go 1 barracks tech lab and then expand is holding off gigantic, crazy 3 and 4 warp gate aggression. Huck has exploited this a lot in his games. Even some less experienced players who just like 4 gating, they have had a lot of wins with this style. So what are we seeing ThorZaIN do? Well, he is just going to completely constrict all the movement at the front of his base by putting that barracks and that supply depot there. So that's going to help tremendously against that. He's not going to have to spend extra minerals getting a 2nd or 3rd emergency bunker. He can actually do quite a lot of cutting of those types of things. It's just positioning that's helping him get that little bit of an edge.
Yeah, he's just going to have to be careful about the style where you get out enough sentries to completely isolate the repairing SCVs, and then allowing the stalkers and zealots to just run up and tear those bunkers down. But NaNiwa doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who would follow that style, and looking in his main base, it looks like that's true, as he's going for the more safer, more tried and true 2 warp gate into robotics, natural expansion just now coming up. He's got 2 probes mining there, just beginning production as he transfers over. So ThorZaIN has gotten the benefit of a much faster expansion, and that's typically how Terran versus Protoss tends to play out, fast expansion versus fast expansion. The one thing that's a little bit different for ThorZaIN, look how quick this engineering bay is in his main base, with the +1 infantry weapons already started and at about a 1/3 at this point. Meanwhile, NaNiwa doesn't even have a forge on his mine, so that upgrade advantage going to be clearly in ThorZaIN's favor, and that's something we've seen him put to work against several Protoss opponents in the past.
Now, on NaNiwa's vision placement, we see that he only has control of that north watchtower, so doesn't quite have a complete lockdown on the center, which, honestly, for me, I would call quite atypical of NaNiwa's usual style, where he has complete total map coverage, ultra-safe style. We see that characteristically early Robo Bay go down, and I absolutely love this. Look at this, moving all of his units to the back of his base, because why leave those at the front when we have vision of the front of our base with that OBS and with that probe? Just extra little bits of safety that make NaNiwa so good.
Yeah, I mean, a very common thing and very obvious when you say it, but we don't see enough players do it. Now, with the Observer moving into the main base of ThorZaIN, he's going to pull those back once he sees what's up. But unfortunately, there's a missile turret here. Let's watch the Observer and see how close it gets to the missile turret. Vision going to be revealed for the Observer. Oh my god, he's just scooting around that beautifully, taking a few shots on the armor. The hull just gets scratched a little bit. Now going to be flowing, not going into the main base. I find that a little bit surprising. Going to swoop around, and ThorZaIN reacting by getting a starport, getting a reactor onto the factory, so not going tech lab. Thus far, going to swap that out with the starport and then probably drop the tech lab onto that factory, or he may choose not to drop anything onto it.
Just as you were saying, Chill, that early +1 attack will therefore lead to an early +1 armor. ThorZaIN now beginning to mass up some Marauders as his Marine count is quite high, sitting at 15 Marines. We see NaNiwa still ahead in the probe count, chrono boosting out a lot of them early on, but now devoting that chrono boost to the Colossus and the Colossus tech. NaNiwa has done this exact mixture of structures quite frequently in other games. 4 gateways, 1 robo, almost certainly going to be doing a very early Colossus push, and it was almost funny to hear someone say this, that at MLG, almost all of his games were under 10 minutes long, because NaNiwa just has such incredible early game push timing. Very, very, very solid.
And when someone has that, it's very difficult to stop. They play safe in the early game, but safe enough to put a little bit of pressure on, exploit that to get his tech out, and that's what we can see here with NaNiwa. As you mentioned, controlling that Xel'Naga watchtower, getting the Observer out. He realizes it's safe to go for Colossi, and that's exactly what he does. ThorZaIN now pushing out with that 1-1, but the Observer has caught wind of that and following the Terran units down. NaNiwa has dropped a third base here. ThorZaIN going to try to scout that. Moving in the Hellion. Looks like he is going to be able to get vision of that, so he's going to be able to know exactly what's going on. Now in a retreat, the Observer following it out. I like this retreat. He doesn't want to deal with the Colossi. There are 2 out there. Is the extended thermal lance done? Yes, it is. So ThorZaIN needs to get out of there until he starts getting Vikings out.
Looks like we see ThorZaIN pulling back into a very, very defensive position, even getting that second starport so early. And there's the armory. We're going to see that classic ThorZaIN very fast 2-2 style play. But NaNiwa abusing the huge range of these Colossi to start picking off those units at the front. The Vikings do end up poking up. Let's see if NaNiwa has the micro available to be able to do damage back. We see, hey, look at that. 2 force fields thrown down, retreat incoming. NaNiwa brilliantly using that little push to help secure that third base.
Right, and I think both players are going to be fine with NaNiwa retreating there. Look at this Hellion at the third base for ThorZaIN. That may come into play. Once the probes get transferred over to that third base, the Hellion could come in with a few swipes and really equalize the income. Scan going off to kill out the Observer of NaNiwa, and just a Viking flying through the middle, wants to see where is the army. Another probe coming out for NaNiwa. And you know, Day, I just had an embarrassing moment. I wanted to close the replay time indicator so I didn't spoil myself, and then I realized, hey, this is live. So for anyone just tuning in, we are live with these 2 players from New York City. I just want to remind everyone.
There's that transfer going on from NaNiwa. It looks like ThorZaIN continuing to mass up a lot of Vikings. And kind of like we were saying, Chill, the fact this is played in New York City, it looks like time zone changes. Not exactly a problem for either of these players as we see them playing at tip-top form. NaNiwa is doing a couple of very subtle things that I just love so much. As he was doing that push and as he was taking his third, he suddenly began massing lots of Immortals and is continuing to add those in, completely halting all Colossus production, just using a couple of Colossus to freak the opponent out. And look at ThorZaIN, still producing Vikings 4 at a time. Completely overreacting, and in the meantime, NaNiwa just getting himself upgrades, getting himself Psionic Storm, massing up a very intimidating Zealot Templar Immortal army.
Of course, history has shown us, Day, that ThorZaIN can get to 2-2, do amazing micro against Immortals, and then actually land these Vikings and use them as combat units. We've seen that on Metalopolis against OGSMC, working really well for ThorZaIN. ThorZaIN actually sacrificed that Hellion to try to take down probes at the third base, only getting 1 or 2, and NaNiwa with an extremely quick reaction time, warping in this Stalker to completely isolate that. Upgrades for ThorZaIN, have they completed? No, still 1-1. 2-2 on the way, about 10 seconds away, and this is going to be a sick timing for ThorZaIN here.
And it looks like NaNiwa is in the process of adding on 7 more gateways. It's definitely going to be a little bit low on money unless he cancels one of those. No, going to let all of those go down. Definitely wants to go into huge Zealot Templar macro mode. It looks like a couple of Marines swing up to that third expansion, but there is a cannon and a Stalker there to greet them. So with the double stim, they will be able to take out a couple of probes. Look at that tiny little move by ThorZaIN that's able to do way more damage than the investment was worth. We also see ThorZaIN now taking his third expansion in the bottom right, almost done morphing that to a planetary fortress, and his famous Ghost Academy is now finished, and those ghosts are beginning to be produced 4 at a time, almost like those old Vikings.
We've got Psionic Storm complete now, 3 High Templar out for NaNiwa, just building up that energy. 1 at about 2 Psionic Storms ready, the rest with 1 ready. So that totals 4 storms, Dave. But with the ghost coming out soon for ThorZaIN, we're going to see the classic battle of EMP versus Feedback versus Psionic Storm versus Bio Ball, and it's going to be exciting. Vikings now moving forward to try to snipe the Colossus as we have the cat and mouse dance back. One Colossus is going to get sniped almost immediately. Second one going to get 2-shotted. No! It stays alive.
Narrowly avoiding being toppled into a giant pile of legs. So it looks like we are now going to see NaNiwa try to move into the southern expansion. He's advancing forward with those High Templar. We see ThorZaIN with a single Marauder advancing forward, almost takes out a Templar, but there are some storms. We see more storms going down. Those ghosts do not quite have the energy, and there are some amazing feedbacks picking off most of the ghosts in that army. Now the Zealots beginning to stream forward. Great force fields getting thrown down. The Vikings land.
Oh
NaNiwa
my God.
streaming in. The 14 gateways he has, the production ramping through the roof. ThorZaIN being ripped apart. NaNiwa just has too strong a composition, too well timed, and there the force fields will perhaps let ThorZaIN stay alive for a few moments longer. But unless ThorZaIN has some amazing micro up his sleeve, this Archon Zealot Sentry Stalker army might be a little too much.
Dave, that was just a mid-game army composition that I've never seen exploited like that. NaNiwa just bringing so many units out of nowhere, now going to town on the Planetary Fortress. SCVs pulled, force fields set up to try to isolate the Planetary. It looks like it will indeed get taken out as the force fields completely surround that, just hugging them with the grip of death. And now the Protoss has completely cut off the income at the third base. ThorZaIN trying to move out with a small army, but NaNiwa just has so many units, and he's caught up in the upgrades. He's actually at 2-2 versus ThorZaIN's 2-2, so ThorZaIN does not have the advantage of upgrades that we're used to seeing him have in TVP when he plays Bio versus Bio.
Oh my god, look how brilliant NaNiwa is after having a huge win in the battle and a huge win taking out that expansion, pulling back so that way these 9 High Templar that have morphed in, he can rejoin with his army, wait till I have enough energy, and then move out again. Look at this, NaNiwa morphing in a full 10 Zealots at his third base and now gearing up for a second push with 9 Storms Chill. That's going to be absolutely brutal for ThorZaIN to deal with.
So ThorZaIN going for a counter drop, probably his only option here, but I feel like NaNiwa may just give it up and go for the counterattack, go straight for the throat of ThorZaIN's natural. We're going to have to see. Keep in mind, NaNiwa is almost max, so he won't be able to drop much in to try to defend this now at 200 supply as he warps in a High Templar and 2 Zealots, but without that amulet, Templar going to get sniped away, and NaNiwa choosing to go for the fourth base as opposed to the natural, going to move in and cut off ThorZaIN's one of his last mining operations. He's still got his natural. As ThorZaIN is going for the main nexus, he should probably try to take out all these production facilities as NaNiwa is sitting in his, oh my god, coming towards his own natural. This is a very tense and difficult point for ThorZaIN to come back from. He's pulling all the way up to his ramp, going into the main base, going to try to drop EMPs to deal with these units, but there may just be too many Protoss units. EMPs dropped on the High Templar, SCVs pulled, Zealots just charging up, and this is probably too much for ThorZaIN to deal with. SCVs being pulled up the line yet again, but so many units crashing into the main base of ThorZaIN.
ThorZaIN has Zealots crawling through his base like Zerglings, more feedbacks picking off. Oh my god, storms on all the SCVs, 170 to 47. We see ThorZaIN only has a handful of Marines and Marauders at the expansion, and good king NaNiwa takes another long, close game. With that first push, I couldn't believe how brilliant that decision-making was by NaNiwa, picking off the army, isolating it in the natural expansion with the 2 force fields, and then rushing straight to that planetary fortress, and then afterwards immediately pulling back these 2 players so evenly matched. This is the finals that I think everyone has been waiting for.
I can't believe that NaNiwa gave up, his tech going straight to the Colossus, or gave up his upgrades, and then got those 2 forges up in the mid-game, and caught up to 2-2. That's extremely surprising to me. More surprising, he got the 3rd base up faster than ThorZaIN, yes, but where did all those gateway units come from? When he crashed into ThorZaIN with the force fields and the psionic storm, it just seemed like there was nothing ThorZaIN could do. Just so many units pouring in. That was incredible to watch. It's not, often you see players show unit control that really impresses you. But in that game, I was impressed with the direction of NaNiwa's build and his macro. Just so many units.
Absolutely phenomenal play. I mean, one thing that I really love about watching both of these players play is, like we were saying earlier, so much of early StarCraft 2 was about what was my unit mix? How strong is my blob? And it was, okay, let's just mash our blobs together and see what ends up popping out the other side. But we're seeing timing from both these players. Yeah. It's all about the blob and SC2 chill. I know what excites you. So, I mean, really... So really, in these games, we're seeing phenomenal timing. It's less about the units that these players are making and exactly when and how they're moving those units around the map. ThorZaIN popping right out at 2-2, the exact time that his expansion finishes, the exact time that his ghosts are on the way. And we see NaNiwa taking his 3rd base, and under huge pressure, if ThorZaIN had pushed a minute earlier, ThorZaIN's 7 additional gateways would not have been done, but NaNiwa having the phenomenal timing to be able to get those out just inches away from being defeated. And then with that huge counter swing, we're starting to really see some absolutely beautiful developments in the PvT matchup. I mean, these 2 players, I think, are clearly the 2 strongest players that we've seen in the TSL3, and I am just delighted to see them facing off here in the final. NaNiwa now at 2-1.
Yeah, and game number 4 is going to move on to Terminus Re, a larger map with very easy 3 bases to take. So I'm going to be interested to see what kind of modifications is ThorZaIN going to make to his build. We've seen NaNiwa play largely the same style all 3 games with different results, but once he gets up to that quick 2 Colossi with Thermal Lance and pushes out, it seems like he just grasps control of the game, breaks out, transitions into High Templar, and ThorZaIN's really having a difficult time overcoming that. Terminus Re kind of takes away the opportunity for any sort of fast, aggressive plays just because of the sheer size of the map. So I'm wondering, is ThorZaIN going to transition into a different composition, maybe get those ghosts out more quickly? It's going to be interesting to see. I would not be surprised to see NaNiwa playing the same style. It's worked for him in the past. It's tried and true. Why change it?
And, one thing that's absolutely delightful to see about these players on a map like this is that most people look at it and see the sort of broad strokes, like the 100-foot view of the map where they say, oh, a lot of expansions, easy to take. I guess it's a big macro map. I guess we better just macro and have huge fights in the middle. But these players, NaNiwa and ThorZaIN, are the kind that have razor-sharp eyes whenever they analyze these maps. And any little tiny terrain that could possibly be exploited, you will see those players exploit that, just as we saw NaNiwa march 5 Colossi and a control group of Blink Stalkers up into ThorZaIN's back door on Crevasse. A completely wild move that only these players with, again, that razor-sharp eye would be able to find out. And really, NaNiwa is starting to demonstrate how he was able to do that 24-0 run in MLG until he reached the finals.
Yes, and that 35-0 best of 3 or bigger run that he's currently tearing on. So, again, I just want to point out that we've been cross positions in all 3 maps. If they spawn close positions or close by air, that may bring a change to things. That may open up more potential for drops out of ThorZaIN. If they spawn cross positions again, that may give the opportunity for more passive play to open up more tech routes to try to counter the composition that has just been punishing ThorZaIN so heavily. And we're going to have to find out where they spawn on Terminus Re in game number 4 right after this.